Pacers drop another one to a big Orlando Magic team. Why can't they beat this Magic team? What went wrong in this game? And the free throws, especially on defense, have to be cleaned up by the Pacers. That and all more coming on today's Christmas version of Locked On Pacers. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Monday and Merry Christmas. Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI. And today, unfortunately, on such a happy day for most people, we're talking about a bad day for the Pacers, who are back to 500 at 14-14 after losing to the Orlando Magic on Saturday. Pacers' first time at 500 since they were 3-3. They've held it off since then, but could no longer do it, losing to the Magic by 7 points on Saturday. That Magic team is a tough matchup for them, yet they had outlets to win this time, giving up 117, once again below the line of number that the Pacers usually need to concede to win, but they couldn't score enough. A couple of reasons why there. And the game flow really hurt them. And these are both things that the Magic do that hurt the Pacers, which exposes a flaw with the Pacers and exposes a flaw the Pacers have against any team, Magic or not, and their size. So we have a lot to talk about from the game, and in the spirit of the holidays, we'll make a Pacers Christmas wish list. Two things player-specific that I want to talk about, and a third thing generic for the team. I think you can guess one of the things the Pacers may, in fact, want for Christmas. They lose to the Magic on Saturday. Very, very much a better performance from the Pacers than the first time they played the Magic, which still, for my money, is their worst loss performance-wise of the season. But you could poke holes in a lot of this Pacers night, right? I went into the post-game media room, and the game flow kind of dictated this, this was fresh on my mind, right? The Pacers took a lead in the third quarter of this game. I'm jumping too far ahead, but I'll explain why in a second. Pacers took a lead in the third quarter of this game. It was their first lead since like 6 minutes into the game. The Magic were crushing them during the second quarter and a little bit of the third quarter, up as much as 15. But the Pacers came all the way back, and they were winning in the third. And it felt like they were playing really well. And then they lost. And the Magic were way better than them in the fourth quarter. They almost went up by double digits again. And you look after the game, and in the fourth quarter, the Pacers scored 18 points. That's it, right? They really could not get it going down the stretch. And so in my head, mostly because it was recent, but also because the Pacers played so well in the third and clearly figured something out offensively, right? You look at their third quarter stats from this game. Miles Turner was amazing in the third quarter. One of his best quarters ever. 2 blocks, a bunch of good defensive plays, made all 7 of his shots in the field, 15 points, 3 rebounds. Buddy Hield was rolling in that quarter. Tyrese Halliburton was rocking in that quarter. 33-20. They looked great on both ends, offense and defense. And then the fourth, their defense was still good. They held the Magic to 44 points in the second half, only 24 points in the fourth. So I wanted to come down into the post-game media session and talk about the fourth quarter offense for the Pacers, because everything I just said about the second half sounds like a good game for the Pacers. But then in the fourth quarter, they scored 18 points. 18 points. They were 1 of 5 from deep. They went 8 of 17 in the quarter. That's not awful, but they went 1 of 5 from deep, right? So that means they were 7 of 12 on twos, which is okay. They only attempted 2 free throws. They burped up 4 turnovers, and the pace of the game was really slow, which we'll talk about in a moment. Free throws were a big part of that. And that really hurt them, right? So Halliburton and Nembhard were combined 5 for 6, and the rest of the Pacers made 3 total shots in the final quarter. That didn't cut it. They needed to be better on offense down the stretch, right? And I thought that was a key part of it. What made them so arrhythmic? What made that fourth quarter so poor for them? They averaged over 30 points a quarter. If they reach 30 in the fourth, they win handily in this game, right? But they didn't. So I wanted that to be where I started when I was thinking about why the Pacers lost this game, what changed for them. But none of them, Rick Carlisle, none of the players we got to talk to post-game, were interested in talking about the fourth quarter offense at all. And they were right to do so. They said, no, that was bad, but that's not why we lost. We lost because we let the Magic score 73 points in the first half. And that is 100% true. And that should have been my lead. And credit to the Pacers for being right on about this. Right? 36-27 in the first quarter, 37-32 in the second quarter, both in favor of Orlando. Look, Orlando's defense is pretty good. There's going to be stretches like the Pacers had in the fourth where you struggle to score against them. We saw the Magic embarrass these guys. Just terrible. Again, for my money, the worst Pacers performance of the season back in November. But this time, the Magic were scoring so easily in the first half of this game. And some of it is that they are a really, really tough matchup for the Pacers, right? Franz Wagner's huge. He had 13 points in the first half, making half of his shots. But Paolo Banchero is huge. 23 points in the first half. Took him 8 shots to get there. He took 11 free throws. Mo Wagner and Goga were causing problems. Jonathan Isaac's huge. Caleb Houston was making his threes. He's a bigger guard. They have size all over the court, right? Excuse me if you can hear that chair creaking. So they're just big at every position. Even their guards are big. And that we've known that is tough for the Pacers. I don't want to hop on that right this second. We'll talk about it in a minute. But they aren't a good shooting team. Their spacing's a little clunky. Like they take a lot of inside shots. They only made 3 threes in the first half. The thing that the Pacers did so poorly defensively, and this will be the highlight of our second segment, is they fouled them like crazy. Like crazy. 27 free throw attempts in the first half for the Orlando Magic. Pacers with 19 fouls. Now, they defended better in the second half, right? The Magic only scored 44 in that half. That number's wrong. They scored way less in the second half. And part of that was that the Pacers only fouled 11 times in the second half and cut that free throw number down significantly. But the first half was so bad. They didn't come, and some of it was like things about the Magic, like I just said, their size, their play style that were difficult for the Pacers. But some of it was the same thing that's plagued the Pacers so often this season. They just didn't look ready to play when the game started. It makes no sense, right? It's confusing to them too. No energy, low energy moments to open these games. And their offense was clicking enough that you couldn't tell as much, but they're just Magic would come down, ho-hum, 2 passes, 1 screen. All of a sudden there's a switch and Paolo Banchero is being guarded by, someone who's 6'4" or shorter. And that is just a flaw in the Pacers roster. They don't have the size to handle a team like that. Obi Toppin, for all the things he's done well this season, can't really handle those kind of matchups, right? In the first half, he only played 8 minutes because his defense wasn't good enough and he wasn't making shots, even though he has size. And Aaron Nesmith, usually a guy they can rely on in those situations. Really rough game for Aaron Nesmith. He fouled out. He couldn't make shots. So they were running out of options. They tried, and I forgot about this actually when I asked about this. They tried to go big. This is something that worked for them against Detroit in their big front court. They tried to go big. They tried to use Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson together, right? And they couldn't because of foul trouble. The fouls were such a big problem for the Pacers. Miles Turner had 3 in the first half. Isaiah Jackson had 4 in the first half. This was his worst fouling game in a while. And Jalen Smith had 3. And that is compounded with Miles Turner hurting himself a little bit. He's fine. I talked to him after the game. But still, all of that together meant they couldn't play big. They couldn't risk losing their center rotation for the second half, right? So all of a sudden, they didn't have the energy to start the game defensively. And then their strategy to combat the Magic's size and make it so, they could at least try to slow it down was unavailable. And their best options to combat that size were playing poorly in Nesmith and Toppin. And all of a sudden you're ending up with very poor matchups all over the court, right? Like such a snowball cascading effect of things going poorly to defend those players. And so some of that is on the Pacers, some of it's not. You can't control injuries, right? The fouls were ticky-tacky, but they were fouls. But like some of it's stuff that just kind of happens, but some of it's stuff that they can absolutely control, right? Poor defensive rotations, poor communication. We'll talk about the fouls in the second segment. It's a big story for the Pacers this season. But the snowball effect of all of those things, making it so they just did not have the right matchups and the right capabilities to handle the Magic size. Again, there's such a bad matchup for the Pacers, but they couldn't defend well enough in the first half. And some of that's on the players, some of that's on the system, some of that's on the team construction. You can point your finger any number of directions, but they didn't have it. And that's why they lost, because they let the Magic score so many points in the first half, because they figured some stuff out in the second half. I was right. They scored 44 points, the Magic did, in the second half. If the Pacers had even allowed just like 60 in the first half, they win. But they allowed 73 to a crummy offensive team. And then they could not recover themselves in the fourth quarter late in this game, because some good stuff did happen, right? Some signs pointed to the Pacers at least figuring some stuff out in this game. Andrew Nembhard was fantastic, probably his best game of the season. Tyrese Haliburton bounced back with a big offensive night. Miles Turner was unbelievable. Like I said, best quarter of his season. Lots of stuff that, had they won, you could have pointed to this, that, and that and said, this is great for the Pacers. Turnaround game from Haliburton. Nembhard's ascending after his injury. Turner looked great. They got the help they needed around their star, and they won. Instead, an odd game flow, bad fouls. Pacers can't be happy with how they played. And, like I said, unfortunately, for the first time since they were 3-3, back to 500. This team is not where they need to be record-wise, given their upcoming schedule. I keep harping on this, and I'm going to because it's going to feel like we're talking about their quality opponents for a month, because we are, right? Chicago, Houston, New York are their next three. New York's figured out their center rotation. Chicago's playing better. Houston is better. Those are good teams, but they're lower quality than the Pacers' insanely hard open to January, which, just for your refresher, in the first 2 weeks versus Phoenix, at Boston, I mean, it's just brutal. And at Sacramento, who's also fantastic. So there are some easier games in there, but it's their hardest month by far. They need to get some wins, and they didn't. They didn't win a game that they could have won. Things did bounce their way. They could not quite take advantage, and they're back to 500. And the fouls, to me, are the biggest one individual story from this game. We'll talk about that, as well as something about Andrew Nembhard that I think is important before we talk about Christmas wish lists for the Pacers on today's Locked On Pacers. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. And if you tuned in on Christmas, thanks a ton. It's much appreciated that you would take time out of your holiday and spend it with me, where I'm in lovely Central Illinois. Yes, you can see and probably hear the travel setup. Apologies for not calling it out earlier if you don't hear the normal sound quality or this very creaky chair that I am sitting in. And I have my laptop sitting on a chair to set up my desk. I should have just switched which chairs these are for tomorrow's recording, so I have a less creaky chair under my butt. Check out Locked On Magic, Philip Broxman-Reich, for your second listen. He crushes it, covering a different young ascending team in the East, in Orlando. If the Pacers and Magic could somehow merge rosters, they would be set up for a long time to be very good. They have opposite strengths and weaknesses. They have opposite strengths and weaknesses positionally as well, even beyond just what their teams are good at. I mean, they would be a very good merge. And Mosley and Carlisle, coming both from Dallas, I think is quite funny as well. The standout stat from this game to me is the free throws, right? And I already have alluded to it a few times, but now I want to really dive into this. So the Magic took 41 of them, and they earned most of them, right? Like I'm generally not a guy who comments on refs at all, and players obviously, well, they're in the heat of the game. They obviously think they deserve more, and the other team deserves less. But I never saw a foul in that game that I was like, oh, what was that? It's just how I am. I feel that way about every sport and every moment of basketball. I feel like Pacers took 13 free throws. This is their second straight game with very few free throws. I commented on their points in the paint number being super low against Memphis. It was only 40 today, right? So maybe they need to put more of an emphasis on the rim in general. The free throw disparity is one thing, but hacking teams in general quite often has become a big problem for the Pacers. There's many reasons for this, but just mathematically, we can just use this game as an example. The Magic made 6 threes, right? The Pacers made 15. So that is already a huge advantage. It's 9 3-point shots advantage for the Pacers. That's 45 points. The Magic made a bunch more free throws and made more twos, but you get the gist of that math problem should favor the Pacers. The Pacers were in it. They were close enough. They lost, but they were in the rebounding battle. They were only 2 behind in the turnover battle. The Magic did have a few more possessions in this game in general, but the real big imbalance stat in this game, right? The Pacers made 4 more shots, was the free throws. The Magic dominated the foul line. And the free throws are, without a doubt, the most efficient way you can end a possession in the NBA, right? Every team in the league, on average, is 73% or better from the foul line. And that's not fair for players. There are some crappy free throw shooters in the league. Orlando has some not great shooters, but their worst foul shooter in this game was at 50%, and most of them were at 75 or better, right? So that's about 1.5 points per possession. That's amazing, right? That's absolutely amazing. Obi Toppin's leading the league in 2-point percentage at about a 1.5 points per possession if he gets a good look from 2. Fouling is bad. You're giving the other team points for some reason or another, and the Pacers are the worst at it. This game obviously really underscores it when you see how many free throws the Magic took, but you can go look at some advanced stats around the league, and Basketball Reference fortunately tracks this, right? Free throw attempts per field goal attempt for opponents, right? So what teams are allowing the most free throws per shot attempt? That way you take out the element of pace. If you just look at opponent free throw attempts per game or opponent anything per game, the Pacers are going to rank pretty high because they play so fast. Their opponent has a lot of possession. It's not fair. It's not a good way of looking at what they do. But this is a rate stat. This is per shot attempt. They're still the worst. They're allowing the most free throws in the league per shot attempt on the season. Other teams down low in this category: the Pacers, the Pistons, the Rockets, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Hornets, the Kings. Have you heard a team that's really threatening on defense yet? Right, like you get the gist. The best defensive teams in the bottom 10 of the stat are the Magic and the Cavs. Right, so it's completely correlated with bad defense, but certainly not fouling is better than fouling. And a lot of good defenses are on the other end of the stat, like the Celtics, like the Lakers, like the Raptors, like the Timberwolves, like the Bucks, like the Heat. These are all teams in the bottom 10 of this. You get the gist. And you don't need to be a genius to go, hey, fouling is bad. You're giving the other team easy points. But when you can kind of correlate those, it's important. And the other stat I will throw at you to make this more clear, right? When the Pacers give up more than 25 free throw attempts in a game this season, they have a losing record, right? So that's bad. Fouling is bad. That's the other team. I'm dumb. That's not the stat I was looking for. When the Pacers allow more than 30 free throw attempts, that's exactly, there it is. Sorry, I was going to say this looks wrong. The Pacers are 3-7 when they allow 30 or more free throw attempts from their opponent in a game. And the wins against those, two of them are Detroit and San Antonio, games where their offense was unbelievable. And the other one was the Philly in-season tournament game. So fouling is bad for the Pacers. It's been a problem for them all season. And there's a lot of reasons it happens, right? And this game exposed some of them that are specific to the Magic, and some of them are bad for the Pacers because of the way they play, and some of them are bad just because, the math problem part that I just explained, right? So looking at the team, and I'll have a story about this up at some point today. It's the holidays. My schedule is going to be stupid. So the big part of it is this, right? The Pacers' individual defense is not good. This is not a secret. We've talked about this all season. They have not been good at keeping guys in front of them, keeping guys out of the paint, use whatever terminology you want to describe guarding someone. They have not been good at that, right? Aaron Nesmith has had his moments. Andrew Nembhard's had his moments. Bruce Brown's had his moments. Credit them for that. On the aggregate, it's been bad. Among, if not the worst in the league on aggregate this season. Guys get into the paint, or there's a pick and roll. Guys get to wherever they want. And that leads to rotations or help defense or something else. Someone else has to now stop the person now attacking because they beat somebody else. And for the Pacers, sometimes that rotation is late. Sometimes it's happening so often that it's naturally going to lead to fouls. Sometimes it's poorly communicated. Sometimes their scheme where they're trying to defend pick and rolls with two guys means that the third guy doesn't want to come, and then he comes too late. There's a lot of factors baked into this, but late help is a big foul causer because guys feel like they have to try to stop the shot. They're the helper, or they're the low man, or whatever terminology you want to use. And I know that low man and helper are different, but in general, that is a big cause to me of their fouls, is their rotations are either late or have to happen so often that there's going to naturally be fouls because of how often they have to do it throughout the game because they're getting beat so much. Like so much of their defensive issues can be retraced to just getting beat on the perimeter. But there's more of it than that, right? They do a lot of gambling, right? And some of that is natural instincts from some good steals guys or guys who have been good steals guys before. And some of that is poor reach-ins or desperation plays because you're about to get beat and you don't want to get beat. Some of that's just stupid decision making, right? And some of that's younger guys who have done that their whole life, and some of that's veterans who are making, silly plays. That has to be cleaned up too. And those aren't always shooting fouls that lead to free throws, but with the bonus involved, they still matter in the free throw count throughout a game at some point, right? Those have been a big problem for the Pacers too. And then in this game, there was a third element that this happens fairly often for the Pacers, given how small they are. And I just alluded to what it was. There's a size component to it where nothing actually goes wrong with what you're trying to do defensively for the Pacers, like where you're switching or your scheme's doing what it's supposed to. But the way the possession flows, you end up with, I'm not going to pick on anyone, so I'll just say a 6'4" guy on Paolo Banchero or Franz Wagner. And so a lot of times their best option actually can be to foul because the shot that player's about to take is going to be a 70+% shot, right? And so then fouling mathematically becomes at least somewhat smart. So some of this is just poor defensive play in terms of scheme and team rotations. Some of this is poor technique in terms of actually defending shots and gambling and things like that. Some of this is the makeup of the Pacers roster, too small against Orlando, like you're going to foul taller guys. And some of it is smart fouls against guys who are bigger than them. And they are often the smaller team this season. They just need size so bad. But you put all of those together, and that is why they're leading the league in fouls per shot attempt. And that's bad, right? It's literally an infraction, right? It's against the rules is what a foul is, like at the most zoomed out level of what a foul is, right? That's why I think the take foul is so interesting, because they said the penalty for what you're doing is not harsh enough. If a foul is the best outcome, right? Fouls are supposed to be, a punishment for doing something you're not supposed to do. And the Pacers are fouling and sending teams to the line the most of anybody. That's bad, right? And then there's so many causes for it. And at the core of it is, and this is like a duh statement to say, but just defend better, right? Stay on your guy. Don't require help. Communicate. Duh. They'll tell you that. They need to be better at that. That part isn't rocket science. But what is more important is, the size part of it, trying not to get in those situations as often as possible. The stupid gambling fouls, try to cut down on those. All those little things, that can help a little bit. That would go a long way for this team. Like if the Magic take 30 free throws in this game, still a big number, by the way. 30 free throws would be in the top 10 most of the Pacers have allowed in a game this season. But if they take 30 instead of 41, Pacers might win this game in regulation, right? So it's tough for the Pacers when they're giving themselves, in this game from the foul line, right? The Magic took 41 and made 33. The Pacers made 9 of their 13. They're basically spotting them 24 points to start the game. And they made up 15 of them from the foul line, or from the free throw line, excuse me. But that's insurmountable. So tough for the Pacers in that way. They don't get the win against the Magic, and they're back to 500. One good thing that happened, and a Pacers Christmas wish list to close out today's show. Andrew Nembhard started and looked good. I want to talk about his pairing with Halliburton, and then a Pacers Christmas wish list because it is Christmas to close out today's show. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. We really appreciate it, especially on the holidays, that anyone would tune in to hear me talk, as I'm still a little stuffy, but definitely sounding a lot better for your second listen. Jump on over to any of the teams who play today on Christmas. Preview those games, preview the action. You can hear about what happens tomorrow. I love NBA Christmas Day. It's so fun to keep up with the action. Some people view it as the kickoff of the NBA season because there's only 2 weeks left of the NFL. Whatever your fandom is there, hope your team is still in the playoff hunt. I'm recording this before the Colts game ends, so I cannot comment on that. As it pertains to the Pacers, though, one thing interesting that happened in this game, Andrew Nembhard started. Bruce Brown was hurt. He had a bone bruise in his knee. So they started Andrew Nembhard. Stylistically, that makes a lot of sense. They're the most similar players in style on the team. So you still get some defense at the guard position, the starting five. And it helps that Nembhard played amazing to talk about what I'm about to say. But, I guess I'll just start there. Nembhard was fantastic. Probably his best game of the season. 17 points and 5 assists, 8 for 10 from the field. Hit his only 3. Was huge in the first. Like, Pacers were down 14 at halftime. They'd probably have been down 25 had Andrew Nembhard not had the half he had. Timely shots, good defense, was everywhere, right? I can't say enough good things about how he played. What this made me consider, though, is do Bruce Brown and Andrew Nembhard skill sets, they're pretty similar. Do they make sense if they're flipped, right? Because I think Andrew Nembhard might be a better pair with Halliburton. I'm still workshopping this theory a little bit, but this game really got me to start thinking about it because we saw this last year. Nembhard starting was really important for the Pacers, and he's a good creator type. And I've said the Pacers need someone like that next to Halliburton forever. And I think Bruce Brown might be a little better of a defender than Nembhard, but I think Nembhard's a better creator type, or his passing certainly is better to me. And I think that might be more important for the Pacers starting five to balance their rotation. I need to see more, especially this season, because we don't have a lot of sample of these guys together in general. But Nembhard played very well, and I think the way he pairs with Tyrese, including last year, right? They started a ton together last year too, so we have a lot of sample of this. Is really special, right? And I think that might be something worth exploring if you're the Pacers. I'm not going to say that they should or shouldn't change right now, but the numbers right now, this season at least, are pretty encouraging, right? Halliburton on, Nembhard off. Pacers, 700 minutes. Insane offense, terrible defense, slightly positive net rating, plus 0.23. Both guys off, Nembhard and Halliburton, minus 4.6 net rating. Pretty good offense, awful defense. Andrew Nembhard on, Halliburton off. Crummy offense, but great defense, minus 0.71 net rating. And then in a very small 151-minute sample of both Andrew Nembhard and Tyrese Halliburton on this season, Pacers net rating, plus 14.74. Boy, is that good. Insane offense, 127.5. Really good defense, 112.7. All this to say, I think that the offense number will come down, the defense will come up. But they complement each other well because I don't think Nembhard really is subtractive on offense in any way when playing with Tyrese. It gives him a second creator. He's a good enough shooter despite him slumping to start the season, and he's a good defender. He's stockier. I think he's just as close to the level of Bruce Brown's defense. He's better at different things. I don't know. I might consider doing that more often if I'm the Pacers, but it's obviously tough to change Bruce Brown's role given what he was brought in to do. And Nembhard, you have a longer rope with. You can develop him in different ways. I'm not saying it's something they should do, but I am thinking about it. And if they don't need to make a change, but if they can find ways to play Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard together more, that would be a rotational change that I think would make sense for them without actually changing who starts and who doesn't. That people talk about that a lot. Change the starting lineup, right? Change the bench, change who's in the bench, change who's in the rotation. Sometimes it's just who plays with who. And I talked about that earlier this week when Rick Carlisle alluded to lineup changes, can be the same thing. Changing the way the rotations makeup looks is actually doing that, even without changing the starting five directly. Christmas today. Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. If you don't, I apologize for throwing this in to your Locked On Pacers episode. Let's make a Christmas wish list for the Pacers. And I think you can all know exactly what's on the top. How about some defense for the Pacers? They open up their stocking, and there's a literal fence in there. I love those picket fences fans hold up at games when they chant defense. Usually it's NFL teams. That's what the Pacers need. They need a literal fence that they can put on the backside of the rim that slides over and helps when they get beat in pick and roll. Their defense has been so bad this year. We don't need to rehash that right this second. But after last night's loss to them, funnily enough, their last couple of games, the number of points they're giving up has been lower. But their defense still has a very threatening. 28th in defensive rating, only ahead of the lowly Hornets and Wizards. The Hornets, they pushed down below them by scoring a bunch of points on them. 1.5 points behind 27th, over 2 points behind 26th. They have a lot of work to do to even climb to, let's say, 23rd in defensive rating is 116.8. They're at 121.2. The top of the Pacers Christmas wish list is better defense. Not a secret at all, but they are begging Santa to come down the chimney with some stops. Two other micro-specific ones, because I'm a dork and I wanted to talk about these things. I think one thing that would go a long way for this Pacers team on their Christmas wish list would be way better passing for Ben Mathurin. And I talked about this before the season, and it's been a big topic for much of the season. A big growth point for him. He is second on the team to me, behind Halliburton, of the best guy on the team at getting past the defender off the dribble, creating an advantage off the bounce. He's very good at that. He can get into the paint. He can make a defense rotate. But his decision-making after that is not very good. Between shooting, passing, deciding what to do. Sometimes he commits to a certain decision right when his drive starts. Sometimes he takes too long to come up with the right decision. He's getting better at these things, certainly, right? His assists per game are up. His assist rate is way up, quite frankly. I don't think he's gotten enough credit for that. His assist percentage now over 10. Last year was 7.5, right? His turnover rate has gone down in the process. Some good stuff is happening with his decision-making process, to be clear. I'm not going to kill him for that at all. But his passing is still very basic when he does make them. If he could be a very good or pretty good passer, given that he can break down a defense and force defenses to rotate, man, would that be huge for the Pacers to just have another guy with those skills. I think he's had a really promising month of December so far, but I think adding to his passing would go such a long way for giving the Pacers something that I think they need, that second creator. So when Halliburton has a week like this, although he was good last night, they don't get so bogged down offensively. And my third and final one, Bruce Brown needs some strength, like some physical strength. Not because he's bad at anything specific that this requires, but because if he's going to be the guy that they throw on all these dynamic matchups, because they have to. He's their best perimeter defender a lot of the time this season. Nesmith has also put himself in those conversations, deservedly so. But why Nesmith is better against some of these big wings is because Nesmith is stronger. If Bruce Brown was also strong or a little stronger, they would have a lot more that they could throw on the perimeter defensively. And you know, Bruce Brown has the foot speed, like he has this funky stride where his legs don't come up as high. He's pretty quick. If he was a little stronger, he could defend a lot more guys. So that would be my Christmas wish list for the Pacers, is some strength for Bruce Brown to allow him to guard more players, some passing for Ben Mathurin so that the Pacers could create better shots when Halliburton's not in the game, and some defense for the whole team. Obviously, that's the case. Bruce Brown's knee's been bothering him. It sounds like for like a little bit of the season, but it wasn't a big enough deal for him to like be on the injury report or anything. Carlisle said he hopes it gets resolved quickly. The Pacers don't play till the day after Christmas in Houston on the 26th for For those of you listening, we'll be podcasting again before and after that game. Hope you guys are having a fantastic holiday. If you have some time off, hope you're spending it with family and having a great time. And if you're spending some time with me, I really appreciate it. That's fantastic. Tomorrow, we'll be talking a couple things. Awards. Where do the Pacers fit into the awards mix this early in the season? The Rockets, their opponent tonight, or tomorrow, in Houston. And third topic, TBD. I need one more to get to the game. Then we'll be good to go. We've got plenty to close out the year. So if you want me to talk about anything, just let me know. I'm on Twitter at Tony R. East. The show is on Twitter at Locked On Pacers. Back tomorrow talking Rockets, talking awards. Till then, everybody, have a happy holiday. We'll see you soon.